March 27, 2013 to order. The only two things on the agenda is Ms. Gross and Jorge Lance to discuss the 9th Street Pond. I guess I have to have an approval for this, right?
I'll make a motion. Second.
Have a motion second to approve the agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Roll call. I kind of went out of order.
Councilperson Payne.
Here.
Councilperson Smith.
Present.
Council President Sellers.
Here.
Council Vice President Julius.
Here.
Councilperson Owen.
Here.
Councilperson Samuel.
Here.
Let the record show that Councilpersons Estavny, Councilperson Glover, and Councilperson Gill are absent.
And Zastani.
I did.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I'm sorry.
Sawdust and mayors.
That's okay.
All right, Ms. Gross.
All right, let me hand out first documents.
Where is it?
The
Are we ready?
coupon.
Coupon.
9th Street.
That's
Yeah,
what
Jorge.
Okay, we have a number of things to cover, so none of the materials should be brand new, a few little edits. But let's start with the document for the wage study, and the first page on the executive summary. I want to just take a little time, since we've had various conversations, to say, you know, let's get back on track. What were we trying to accomplish with this? So back in July of 2012, I was asked to come and review the current non-collective bargaining pay grades for the city, to conduct a market wage study for the benchmark positions and any new positions that were identified by the city, evaluate any revised job descriptions and propose new jobs for the market value, make recommendations for updating the current pay grade system, and then review the current pay policy, make recommendations on that, and then any related recommendations to the compensation policies and plans. So high level, we looked at 49 jobs, benchmark jobs. 19 were reviewed and valued for pay grade placement, and I've got those detailed on addendums B and C, just as a activity that went on beyond the market study. The surveys that were utilized in the study: the Indiana Association of Cities and Towns, and 4 towns were identified by the committee that worked with me on this, and that was HR Director, Finance Director, and the Corporation Counselor at that time. And the cities that we were asked to compare Jeffersonville to were Anderson, Kokomo, Lafayette, Mishawaka, and Terre Haute. Did I get that right? Is
Terre Haute.
Hody. Okay. Sorry, it's the Iowa kid in me. Okay. Also looked at the government database, which gave me access to Louisville Metro salaries and Metropolitan Sewer District employee salaries were appropriate, Bureau of Labor Statistics, salary.com, and then, if necessary, looked at current advertised job postings for comparable positions. So each job had at least 3 surveys, some had as many as 5 surveys that were looked at. So, high level, what I found from the 2009 survey is roughly overall about a 3.5% shift in comp levels. There was quite a bit of variability between individual positions or groups of positions. And the reason being 3 factors: better understanding of the market and match of jobs, because since the 2009 study, all the job descriptions had been rewritten and revised and updated, so we had better information for market matches. There were some significant change in job duties for some positions, and in some cases, the police dispatchers specifically, there was an upward shift in external market value for that position, and I don't have a specific reason why that occurred. Okay, and then the last thing on the IAC surveys, in the past, the city, when I did the study, was a Class 3 city, and so we compared to Class 3 city rates, and with the IAC we compare now with the Class 2 cities. So a little shift there. Okay, high-level overview, just to give you a sense of where the city is. You've got pretty good years of service, 7.5 years, and where that comes into play is where you would expect people to fall within their comp system in the pay grade. Longer years of service, you expect people to be further along the pay grade, etc. But you've got a split. You've got a lot of folks, about over a third, that are less than 3 years of service, and about a third that have more than 10 years of service. So what you're going to see within your individual employees, a number of people kind of centered towards the lower part of the pay grade and a number at the very top, and not so many in the middle. The other thing I was asked to look at this time that we did not do in 2009 was to just look at the longevity pay plan and its potential cost and impact. And the information, we've had previous discussions about this, so I've just presented it here in terms of what that longevity pay plan is and the cost for that, and it's detailed in this report. And estimates, if you continue to plan, how much that will cost the city. It is scheduled to phase out. I believe we have no new incumbents coming into that plan as of January 1st. So there, I believe the current count is about 147 city employees, give or take. It's, that are covered by the plan. 112 are actively receiving benefits. Other highlights. There are 25 employees under the current pay grade system that were identified as red circled. If you recall, the red circle meant they'd reached the top, exceeded the top of their pay range, which meant they were frozen from any pay rates until they changed jobs or the pay grade should shift. And I believe we have about 21 people that are at the $4,000 level on the longevity bonus plan. On item number 4, the city utilizes Fair Labor Standards Act 3 classifications, and it has to do with paying people overtime who are classified as non-exempt. You have an exempt status, which they are exempt from overtime, exempt from the Fair Labor Standards Act. So you have a non-exempt and a salaried non-exempt. During my review of the salary survey data, my recommendation is to no longer use the salary non-exempt classification. It tends to be not understood fully on how to use that classification. People are often not paid correctly. It's very much more complicated from the payroll system. It's much cleaner for a non-exempt employee. You might call them hourly. More traditionally, it's just to pay them by hour for the actual hours worked. And so I made recommendations on how to make that conversion. And it's probably maybe 10 or 12 people that are affected by that classification. It's more of a cleanup of the system, make it easier to process payroll and more accurately reflect hours worked.
So if that's the case, then we're going to drop down to exempt and non-exempt employees then?
You already have, that's really the 2 classifications you have. There's this kind of a funny little classification called salary non-exempt,
Okay.
which meant you got paid a salary, but you're still non-exempt, which meant I still had to pay you overtime if you work more than 40 hours in a week. So you don't really gain anything by the classification. If someone actually worked less hours, you technically would not, you'd still have to pay them their salary.
But you're eliminating that position.
We're eliminating that classification,
type.
saying everybody is exempt or non-exempt based on Fair Labor Standards Act definitions.
Okay.
So then the people...
So it will not affect anybody's pay. If you're scheduled for 37.5 hours a week or 40 hours a week and you continue to work those hours, you get paid the same amount of money. It's just an hourly rate rather than salary.
So then if an employee that is salary non-exempt at the moment does not work those 37.5 hours that week, then they won't be guaranteed that full pay, that full salary.
That's not how salary non-exempt works. It means you pay them their
Get
salary.
salary.
But if we're eliminating...
I don't know what the practice has been, but how that classification would be, you pay them that salary because you've agreed to pay them that salary.
Right, but if we're eliminating that classification, then they could see a decline on their...
Only if they work less hours than scheduled.
Yeah,
And I would hope the city would want people to work the hours for which they were scheduled.
you would hope.
Yeah, so,
Novel idea.
okay. Okay. Okay, and item number 5, in 2009-10, we identified a need to address additional pay equity issues, what I call internal pay equity issues. Before, we were so busy trying to just get the structure in place, get the pay grades in place, get people slotted, we were identified that there might be some internal equity issues, but there wasn't money or time to really address those. So this time I said, let me take a look at that and I'll make some recommendations around that point. So that's item number 5. So, we'll come to recommendations. Our first recommendation, as we just were speaking, is to convert the classification of salary non-exempt employees to hourly non-exempt, and then using the conversion as discussed, if they work 37.5 hours a week, that equates to 1,950 hours. If they work full-time, 40 hours a week, that equates to 2,080 hours. It simplifies hours for tracking and payroll processing, eliminates confusion on the payment for additional hours worked, and more clearly distinguishes between exempt and non-exempt positions for the Fair Labor Standard Act purposes.
Liz, before you move on, will the new software system that we're ordering, is that going to be able to track these hours, to monitor, to make sure we're paying?
These two are going to merge very nicely.
Okay.
Timekeeping will interface with payroll.
And that will be something that's monitored?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank you.
far more accurately when you go
Can I
online.
ask a question? On your salaried employees, you're really not, are you monitoring their hours? That's always been the gray area. So by eliminating this, it should clean that problem up. Because we're going by happenstance on these suits and so forth. Okay.
My second recommendation is to reduce the number of city pay grades from the current 16 to 10 and expand the pay ranges. And I have that on Addendum A, the recommended new pay grades and ranges with positions slotted in them. The rationale being simplify the pay structure system. It's much easier to manage less pay grades. Pay ranges are still well within the standard comp practice. It's moving to a more moderate market typical pay ranges. When we first set these up again, we're sort of taking a whole lot of individual data and saying how can we better organize it. So it's very conservative in the first approach and made a lot of very narrow pay grades. What we found over the last few years that hasn't always worked as well, and also because of the shift in pays that I found in the market study, there are a lot of things that I was going to be shifting everything. It was much cleaner to say, let's just start from scratch and say, let's look at this now with the data we have, what our experience has been, where should these jobs be slotted, and what pay grades make sense. So the new pay grades ranges better fit the data, the updated market data. It'll require less individual adjustments. It'll allow for more upward movement within a pay range. It will reduce the number of red circle employees from the current 25 to 7, and we'll talk about those 7 individuals in a little later in the presentation. And there'll be limited impact on the individual pay levels, except for those noted on page 7. There are a handful of employees that would fall below the recommended new pay grade ranges, and we'll detail that shortly. Okay, again, item 3 talks on the longevity bonus plan. I've made recommendations, and the long and short of this, because prior discussions, is the city has this plan in place. I provided information about the cost and the continuing cost of that plan. My recommendation is that the city continue to move towards phasing this plan out. We've taken the first step of that by stopping entrance, and I've given a number of recommendations from you can continue to do what you're doing and let it phase out naturally, or there's 4 or 5 other steps that would phase that out more quickly. Okay, item number 4 addresses the first step in what I call the internal equity, and I focus initially on key management positions. These are the individuals that are key to having the city run. They oversee key departments, and these are positions you want to pay particular attention to, that people are paid appropriately based on their experience, their years in the job, and job performance. So what I'm recommending for is that the city develop a plan to identify and adjust pay levels for key management staff whose pay is significantly lower than you would expect based on their job performance, the market value of the job, and their years in the job. And I currently have identified 4 positions that I think need review for pay equity adjustments. And I have those listed as follows. The Director of Animal Shelter. That job was significantly upgraded in terms of the scope of responsibility and the experience required for the position from the 2009 study. Director of HR, based on the years of experience, the current incumbent has been there 9, I think going on 10 years. You would expect somebody in that position, that period of time, as long as the performance has been at least competent, that they would be at midpoint, 50% of the range. The Assistant Director of Wastewater and the City Engineer, both based on their years in the position and what I've been told in terms of competent level of performance should be approximately the 25% of the pay range. And so I've listed the equity adjustments that would be needed to place them at that point in the new pay range, pay grades I've recommended. And down below, as I believe I was asked, I have itemized an estimate on what that would cost to make the equity adjustments. I did go ahead and throw in the longevity piece, but that may not be something the city wants to address at this time. So the number indicated in green is the estimate for making those adjustments for those 4 positions. Item 5. This jumped out at me when on the dispatchers. There was quite a significant change in dispatcher pay, and that is why I've signaled them out for a review. And what I've indicated here are the current dispatchers by years of service, what their pay is, where they should be. I'm sorry.
Stop a second. Kim, the Assistant Director of Wastewater, is that the person that works directly with Lynn, or is this a different person directly under Lynn? Oh, it is? Okay, I was wrong. Okay.
I'm sorry, any other questions on?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, no, that's fine, that's fine. And then police dispatchers, then I've indicated the positions, the years of service. Since I've recommended a higher pay grade for them than they were before, people who've been hired this year or last year are under the current entry. This particular sheet at this point is just talking about equity, though. If I'm looking at moving these people where they should be based on years of service in that pay range. And as you can see, you've got individuals with, 8, 9, 16, 21 years of service that are not at midpoint for the pay range.
Liz, I have a question. Explain the difference between the column that says cost with longevity factor.
What I was asked to do initially was to look at the longevity factors, that bonus plan. The city has a longevity bonus plan that pays, I think it starts year 3, and you would get $600 a year, but basically you get $200 a year longevity bonus pay. It maxes out at $4,000. So some of these individuals are eligible for that. And so one of my recommendations early on was if you were to eliminate that plan and take that comp that's paid for the plan and put it into base pay, that would be the impact. Basically, take that money that's over here in a bonus plan and put it back into their base pay. And
If they eliminated the long.
if they eliminated, right. And so I was asked to present both. So that's why there's two columns. Any questions on the dispatchers?
So, okay, getting back to what Les said, the longevity, when we had talked about it, was it 2013 anybody, or is it 2012 anybody hired after 2000?
Yeah, anybody hired, basically December 31st, 2011
Okay.
would have been the last, because as of 12/1 or January 1st of 2012,
There's no longevity.
there were no new enrollments. So anybody hired in 2012 moving forward. is
Okay,
not
so
eligible for plan.
the-
So at some point it'll phase out. Could be 20 years,
Scrubs.
30 years.
Can you stay at the microphone, because I got they're do the minutes on it, and I got the TV on you too.
Smile
Don't mean
big.
to be pushy. but
If you got me on camera,
Sorry.
we're in trouble. Okay.
Okay, so getting back to what you're doing is taking the ones and you're basically rolling their longevity, that's current receiving longevity, hired before 12, and putting it into their base?
No,
No,
I
we
said
have not done that.
that's what's represented here.
Okay.
That's
We're not
what's
doing that.
represented. I was asked to show
Here.
what would
Okay.
it be without that,
this would be
and
the
if
cost
the
of
city
that.
had chosen to
Okay.
eliminate or phase out the longevity plan, that's the value of that to the employees' comp, because they receive that in comp, but it's not, it's a separate pool of money.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
Les asked that, and I was
Yeah.
trying to follow up on that.
Yeah.
Any other questions on that? Okay. On item 6, let's see, look at the non-collective bargaining wage and policy, which I've got copies of that I'll hand out shortly. But just as a high-level overview, the changes I'm recommending for this policy was the inclusion of the corporation counsel position in the review and advisory process for determining the pay of employees, hire rates, etc. To revise the checks and balances measures to conclude clearer guidelines, designating a point person on the city council to help facilitate any questions in pay levels for employees as we spell out on the checks and balances area. And I've detailed those changes. I've included sections which describes advising concern for Green Circle pay rates and internal equity adjustment pay rates also in this revised policy. And I'll hand that out in just a minute. I want to get through the initial recommendations, high level. We do have some below pay range employees on page 7. As I mentioned, should you implement the new pay grade system, there are a handful of people who would fall out of that. The kennel attendants, police dispatchers, 3 positions. 2 I've recommended for equity adjustments. 1 was hired this year, would just need to be brought up to entry. A collection systems utility worker who was hired this year, 10 cents below the new pay range. And a CMS administrator position, that was a position that was upgraded responsibilities and job duties, which placed it in a different pay range. So those, has to be 4, 6, 7, 8, it looks like 9
You remember, Connie?
positions would require adjustments just to bring them up to the minimum of the pay grade. And that cost, and the, the Director of Animal Shelter also. So that's 10 positions, and the cost to bring people just up to the minimum of the new pay grade would be $9,000
Have another question.
annual.
Kim, what is the CMMS? What does that stand for? Oh,
Computer maintenance,
but what's it stand for?
computer maintenance management system,
Okay.
something like that, if I recall right.
Does it have a job description to go with that
Yes, it does.
definition?
And wastewater, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
And the interfaces with HR and with property casualty, vehicles, equipment,
Building commissioner.
building commissioner, everything. Permits, permitting process. the whole-
So in terms of cost for making these adjustments, there are the key management positions to bring them to equity. There are the dispatchers, equity, and then there are the individuals who just to bring them to the minimum pay grade. So that's why you see 2 figures here. 9,000 would bring all these people to the minimum of the pay grade. If you went ahead and did the internal equity adjustments that I'm recommending, then there would only be about $5,000 needed to bring the remaining folks to the entry level of the new pay grade.
Okay, because some of these people are included back here, right? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, what I highlighted on police dispatchers, the 2 positions, and the Director of Animal Shelters, they're actually listed twice. They're listed
Okay.
for equity adjustments, but they're also listed for at least bring them to the minimum of the pay grade.
Okay.
Correct. The other information is things we've covered before, but just general information in terms of below, when do you expect people to hit the midpoint of a pay range? Usually in the lower pay grades, that's going to be about a 6 to 8 year period of time with the new wider pay ranges. With higher level positions, that's going to be about 8 to 10 years. And that's assuming starting at the base, having a 2 to 3% increase, competent level of performance. You'd expect them to move on. People who have higher performance ratings, get greater increases, would move there more quickly. Above pay range employees, those are the red circled ones. I said I'd come back to that. With this new pay grade recommendation, there would only be 7 individuals that would still fall outside and be red circled. Of those, 5 of those 7 employees consist of 2 general laborers, 3 administrative assistant ones, have an average of 33 years of service with the city each. So what you have there is individuals who have been there a very long time, which is wonderful, but as they've gotten a pay increase each year they've been here, and that's what's thrown them way outside market value for those jobs. The 2 remaining employees have about 5 years with the city. One was a general laborer who was demoted several pay grades just prior to the approval of these policies in 2010, and at that time, no reductions in pay were made. They were allowed to move without a reduction in pay. So it's one of those, it's just out of a line. And the remaining is administrative assistant who was hired in 2008, again, prior to formal pay grades, and my assumption is they probably took the pay level of the former incumbent for that position. So it's just out of line.
So those are 2 individuals that make above what the range was when we set the ranges initially?
I don't know when they were hired. These were hired in 2008, and what your pay, we didn't have pay grades at that point. They didn't come into place till 2010. The one individual, the laborer I know, was one that, because I'd asked the question, because the pay was so much higher than other general laborers, I said, explain this, and there's always a story, and the story was this in particular individual apparently had been demoted like 3 or 4 pay grades, and no pay adjustment was made.
So that's not really a demotion.
What?
If you get demoted and you don't get a pay deduction, why is it called a demotion?
Well, that was your prior policy. I'm not recommending it. In the policy we have here, we recommend if you are demoted, there are pay adjustments that would put you in the proper pay. We want to call it demoted or transferred, moved to a position that was 4 pay grades lower. And the current policy addresses that and says you need to look at that and not necessarily pay people their current pay rate, that if they move to a different position that requires less, that the pay should reflect that.
So those are positions that if new individuals came into them, they would start at their lower level?
Well, they would be paid by the policy, which is a good segue.
Gotcha.
I'll hand that out.
The other 5 employees, though, we don't have, there's no mechanism to move them into another pay range, or?
There is a mechanism. They could change jobs.
Right.
I mean, the reality is they can change jobs. If they move into a job that is in a higher pay range, that pays more,
Right.
that could allow them. Or, and I'd have to look, if some of these people, we got an individual who's $4,000 or $5,000 outside the pay range. It would take a long time to make that up. There is some adjustment that can happen as we do these periodic, I think it's every 2 years, the salary surveys are done, that the pay grades themselves will shift. So that'll keep up with normal movement. But this is not uncommon. When you've gone from having no structure to structure, you're going to have these anomalies, and it's just a matter of working through them over time.
And it's also because they've worked here between 18 and 41 years.
Oh, yeah, we got the average of those, one individual's 18 years, the rest had like 35 to 40 some years, so on average it's like 33 years of service each.
And so if they
got a
kept
2 or
getting
3%
raises every time
increase
with no caps, then that's
with no
what's going to
cap.
happen.
Right, that's what happens.
But then on the flip side, some people have historically, when you look back in records, what records I had from prior to when I was here, sometimes people got raises for really no apparent reason, and other people got nothing, so.
Because there was no practice and policy in place to define that, so it may appear to be arbitrary. The purpose of having a policy is that it has defensible reasons for the decisions you make on comp. So on page 9, and then I will hand out the salary administration, my next steps, recommendations, is to continue, the city to continue its progress and bring standardized business practices to the management of its compensation practice, and to continue its goal of performance-based pay. The following steps are recommended. Approve the recommendation 1 to eliminate the Fair Labor Standards Act classification of salary non-exempt and convert positions currently classified as such to hourly, non-exempt. Approve recommendation 2 and implement the proposed new pay grade structure. Review recommendation 3 options and decide on a plan of action to address longevity pay. Approve recommendation 4 and implement a plan to move listed employees to equity levels. 5, review recommendations 5 for the dispatchers and determine if equity adjustments will be considered at this time, given long-term plans for city dispatch services. If yes, I recommend approval and implement plan to move listed employees to equity levels. 6, to approve recommendation 6 and implement the updated non-collective bargaining policy, which we'll hand out momentarily. 7, unless specified in the report, approve the immediate movement of all employees who fall below the minimum of the proposed new pay grades and have no significant job performance issues. I can't emphasize that enough. You do not move people's pay if they have job performance issues. That's number one. They have to be performing their job. You do not want to be in a position to have given someone a significant pay increase and then turn around and terminate them for job performance. So that's listed throughout the policy. That's the first thing we're looking at. 8, continue the performance management training program. We started in 2011. I think we're already on schedule. Got one, I think, next month. Just to continue the training of managers on conducting performance reviews and corrective actions. To come back and finalize the performance management policy. There's a draft that needs to be reviewed and finalized. And then one other recommendation that the city has, I think when we talk about compensation sometimes we often forget and we just talk about pay, what's in my paycheck. The city has a very solid, strong benefits program. You're paying for that, your employees are benefiting from that, and one way that they can understand the value of that is what they call a compensation letter or a compensation statement done at year end that would detail the true value of what their total compensation is for the city. And again, that's another way to communicate the value of working for the city rather than just the paycheck.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
Isn't part of the Affordable Health Care Act going to include benefit packages as part of taxable income? Is that not something that's written into the law that's to be implemented over the next few years?
Well, but last year, didn't they ask?
Last year we had to actually put on there too.
Right, that's right.
Just for information,
For
Information.
but
I
it-
don't know what you offer, what your plan.
And if you're considered a golden,
They're thinking about taxing that,
But
that's why they
they're-
want that.
right. But it's a very positive tool to use for employees, and you're paying this for your employees. They
Right.
should be aware of that. It's a cost and it's a value to them.
And one of the goals I have, and now that, staffing and taxing those things, one of the things I always wanted to be able to annually, whenever we decide when annually is going to be for raises and performance evaluation, every employee would actually receive a letter from the city, from HR, from finance, from council, whoever that would be, basically saying, here's your total comp package. You know, your perf is this much, your clothing allowance is this much, your take-home vehicle is worth this much, your salary is this much, your benefit package is this much. And you may be getting a salary of $50,000, but your total comp package may be $92,000.
Generally speaking,
And one of the things that we've talked with the vendors about in this new program is to be able to somehow start extracting that information based upon us putting in the right information, collecting that stuff in a nice central location that will give Amy and I an opportunity to go in, collect that data, pull that out, and actually put that into a formal letter to employees.
and I understand that you're looking at, you're implementing the HRS and finance programs on order, and one advantage of a lot of those programs is they are set up to do exactly that, that they will, a lot of them will have that as a standard report, what they'll call a total comp statement, so that's wonderful to
And
get,
all these
once the
little things are part
implementation's
of a
down.
bigger plan. I mean, we actually have a vision or a plan for getting there. This is all, isn't just stuff that we dreamed up and thought about. I mean, it's all been very methodical and planned and worked towards it. So that we eventually get to that point.
Kim, this performance management policy, I don't think I've ever seen that. That was,
That's been a couple of years, it got put on the back burner, and now I'm saying it needs to come back up onto the burner, so not for today's review,
give me a copy.
but recommending we bring her back up.
Last year, but I can certainly give you another one.
Yeah.
It would have been-
I'm sure I lost it. I'm sure you gave it
Yeah.
to me.
But this will,
It's just a reminder that it hasn't been finalized, that there's a draft out there that we need to finalize.
but I can get you the one that we currently have.
Kim, can you get it for me too? Because we don't have it in any of our...
Could we have the one that we need to finalize?
Yeah, that's what
copy,
I'd
that's what we need.
Right, I mean, it's still in draft. I mean,
Okay.
it was put together draft when we rolled out the performance management training. It said, here's the first draft. There were some revisions made, but it was never finalized.
And I would
So-
like
so
to see
hang-
the one that we currently use. too.
And Bill, you and I can sit down and go over a lot, I have lots of things to do.
I don't have anything.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a real quick question? Because I know this is from the 12, you haven't added my staff into this new one yet.
And I will apologize, but it wasn't clear to me which, in some of these positions,
Yeah.
what had officially been approved. And so that can be, before we finalize, we didn't go through, and the meeting kind of came up. Which is
Yeah.
fine, I'm good, I'm flexible, but I wasn't sure on a
Right.
couple positions
Short
what the
notice for
status
everybody.
was. So I
Sure.
apologize for not.
No, that's okay, because I can, that's no problem. I
There's
just-
job descriptions, and as long as they've been approved and everything fine, then they can be slotted in. Now, I think with your jobs, they were placed based on the old pay grade number system, so
Fit right in these.
I'll just track them into this one based on similar positions. So
Yeah.
I've already, I think, got a note of that, where they would go.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
okay, you're welcome. Okay, let's see, well, you're going to have a duplicate on both the policy and your report. You've got the same data with the pay grade. So I think what I'd like to do is talk about the policy and the pay grades at the same time, if that's all right. I just did for your convenience that it was all in one document. This is the document that helps the city manage and maintain its compensation practices. So the first part, and I think it'll take, just because there's a number of new folks too, is just take a moment to review why we have this and what the purpose of this document is. The compensation philosophy for the cities is that the city's initiatives, their business goals, competitive outlook, and operating objectives are dependent on what? Attracting and hiring and retaining skilled workforce, high-quality employees for its available positions. The city believes that the basis for competitive overall total compensation plan is the development and the ongoing management of a comprehensive salary and wage administration plan and policy. This policy addresses this one facet of total comp. Remember, we're just talking pay. We're not talking the benefits. And rewards philosophy for the city of Jeffersonville. That is salary administration. As such, the city's objectives that were defined back in 2010 define the competitive market philosophy of the city in relation to base pay, describe the current situation of the city regarding its salary wage administration, define key terms, establish clear roles and responsibilities concerning ongoing administration of this policy, provide and maintain pay ranges based on both internal and external market considerations for all non-collective bargaining positions, define how the city will manage and maintain the established pay ranges, how the city plans to pay competitively based on business conditions, competition, and ability to pay. Establish clear guidelines for determining individual pay rates within the established pay ranges for new hires, promotions, transfers, demotions, other related employee life cycle pay issues. Establish guidelines for adjusting red circle, green circle, and misaligned employee rates based on business conditions, competition, and ability to pay. High level, let's just make sure people understand what the definitions are on the policy. When we talked about the minimum of the pay range, it means what it is. It's minimum, bottom, entry-level position. Typically, that's entry-level pay rate for an individual meeting the minimum requirements for the position. Pay range midpoint, 50%, the middle, that typically represents a fully competent employee, someone who's been in the job. So you said before, anywhere from, or has experience equate 6 to 10 years based on the level of the position. Pay range max is the top pay rate established for that pay grade. Pay grade refers to an established group of a pay range for a group of similarly compensated jobs. A benchmark job is one that's been identified that would be used when we go back out to the market to determine pay for particular pay grades. And I've listed what the benchmark jobs are for 2013 with the new pay grade system as an addendum. Red circle pay rates, those again are the individuals who exceed the current pay range. Green circle are those who fall below. There is a training rate, we put a training rate piece in here. I don't believe it's currently being utilized, but we put that in the case that the city at some time might want to utilize a training pay rate. Okay, roles and responsibilities. City council members, specifying what your roles and responsibilities are to maintaining this policy. The mayor has specific responsibilities. Financial officer, human resource director, human resources director is sort of the glue of all this, having primary responsibilities, but she will work with the mayor, financial officer, and the corporation council in the maintenance of this document and policy. And I've detailed what those roles are. And they have not changed from the prior document, other than the inclusion of the corporation council in that circle of review. Part of your policy requires that annually the HR director will review and recommend to the mayor any needed changes in the policy and associated pay ranges, pay grades, and throughout the fiscal year as needed, i.e. new job is created, what is the process for putting them in the pay structure. A minimum of every 2 years, the policy dictates that a new salary wage study be done, give or take. Give or take. Well, not quite. We did in 2012. We're all right. Okay. Benchmark jobs are identified in attachment B. Again, those are the jobs that we look at for each pay grade to determine what that pay range should be. Okay, guidelines for determining individual pay rates. Again, this is pretty much the same that we've had in the prior policy. But again, it's important to remember that the guidelines, the city's ability to pay is number one. Pay due to fiscal limitations and constraints, business operation needs of the city, specialized skills, education, training required for a position, external market job value, internal hierarchy and/or job value, individual job performance. All those factors come into play of what my pay rate or city's employees' pay rate is, not just external market. Checks and balance rate measures. The intent of the policy is to provide as much authority and autonomy to the individuals who have the day-to-day responsibilities for the compensation management and have the full understanding of the work performed by the employees, i.e. the department head, director of HR. The mayor may approve pay rates and pay changes for the city's non-collective bargaining employees within the guidelines provided by this policy. However, to ensure that no one individual may exercise too broad a scope and determine individual pay rates or pay increases during a rolling 12-month period, the president of the city council or the vice president in the absence of the president will direct, this is new language, will direct the review of any individual employee pay rate change that would, 1, provide a pay increase or cumulative pay increase during a rolling 12-month period that exceeded 7% of the individual's base pay at the beginning of that prior 12-month period, and/or exceed $5,000, or place a new hire above the first quarter of the assigned pay range, that would be 25% of the pay range, for his or her job's pay grade, or place an employee above the pay grade midpoint of a new pay range in the event of a job change, whether it be promotion, demotion, etc. Additionally, the mayor may, at his or her discretion, recommend to the council the reduction in pay of a red circle employee's pay rate to the maximum of the pay range for the employee's current position. Right now, we made a determination when we identified red circles, we would not. We'd let them sit outside the pay range, but we did leave it that the mayor had the option to recommend that, but the council would approve any of those. So that's a reiteration of current policy. Okay. Another change, I guess, in that second paragraph, the HR director, or continuing, will notify the city council president or the vice president in the absence of the president of any such occurrence as detailed above, and provide the individual documentation to support the recommendation for pay levels or pay increases that are outside the scope. The president, vice president will review the pay recommendation and make recommendations to the remaining council members and ask for their review and input. The president and vice president will notify the HR director within 2 business days as to the council's 1, need for additional information, 2, the approval of the pay level or pay increase, or 3, the rejection of the pay recommendation, and the council will provide sufficient reason for the rejection and offer an alternative pay level where appropriate.
Is that,
That's new language.
is that language that is technically legal? We can't make a decision without being in a
Yeah.
public meeting.
They can't, they'll,
That was one of the questions that had, we come in conversations and we had not resolved.
we'll have to rework that because, I mean,
They meet twice a month, basically. First.
It'd have to
The
be a
intent
special...
is to have their involvement, and I think, if I can speak,
Sure.
what is currently occurring is it was taking a long time. An email would go around trying to, and I won't use the expression herding cats, and I might put that on record, but it's difficult to get all the people who have various responsibilities together for this when you're trying to make critical, time-sensitive pay, especially with a new hire, so there was that.
But a
So we have to
board,
figure it out.
public decisions have to be made at public
Right.
meetings.
yeah, I think you're
So we have to
right.
figure out a balance on how we can do
Just have
that.
to remove that within 2 business days and just put it there within a reasonable time. So, I don't think you can-
Yeah, we can always have a special meeting if it's critical, but it still has to be advertised for,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
can't see where
I say within a reasonable.
I know, I'm just saying.
Historically, that's, I mean,
Now, how would you,
sports, we've had approval.
Be careful, because we've said this a couple times within the last year.
it's
I
new
know.
ground, and we're trying to figure out how to,
Because we've done it
the
before,
intent of
doesn't
it.
mean it was legal.
But the intent was, Ed and I had this conversation multiple times, and then when Connie became president, we had this conversation. You know, when you're trying to conduct business professionally and extend a job offer,
Mhm.
the last thing you want to do is have somebody that has like an incredible skill set that you want to pay several thousand above that minimum, and to say, well, let me get back with you, and have to take 3, 4, 5 days, weeks to get back to somebody. I mean, that oftentimes, you have the potential of losing some good qualified candidates as well.
So I guess maybe we
The
can,
intent
we
around
can,
that was to be able to try to,
we can make a commitment to you that if it's a candidate that's very important, that we can have a special meeting.
Yeah, my recommendation, that's up to Alan, that's up to me. I would just take out the 2 days and just put it within a reasonable time.
They're gonna be, they're gonna
And if
be
we
back
need to
there.
have a special meeting,
Such a
Okay.
case.
I understand the intent.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
but Indiana law is Indiana law.
Right, no, and we were,
Can't
He still
make
sounds
decisions.
bad, too.
Yeah, we don't want to.
we weren't sure where that line was, we said, this is the intent, how can we make this work?
Put reasonable time.
Reasonable time?
And we understand if something's very critical, we can always schedule a special meeting.
Okay, I'll do that.
and to keep the multiple million emails going back and forth. I mean, it's kind of like,
It's efficiency,
That big a deal.
efficiency, but yet still has that level of control within those parameters that we've identified. Now, for the new hire pay rates, the recommendation is to allow the discretion of HR, Finance, Corporation Counsel, the department heads, mayor, up to 25% of the pay range to determine that, and it needs to be still defended. It needs to be defended based on the person's skills and experience, but the discretion up to 25%. It goes beyond that, then that becomes a second level review.
What is it today? Nothing. Minimum? Minimum.
Well, it was actually,
Today, what is it today?
that's quite, today I think it's minimum. What the original policy was 50% of range.
Yeah.
So this is coming off the 50%,
Of the
coming up from zero, depending on
The
which
mid-
perspective
mid-range.
you have.
They can go 25% of the minimum or 25% of the mid.
25% of the pay range, and I will go through, when this is approved, I will go through and identify what that dollar
what?
amount is for each pay range. But it's the 25, where you have 50% is the middle, the 25% would be kind of between
Middle of the,
be the quarter percent.
So the 25% is between the minimum and mid-range.
yes. Right in there.
Correct.
50% is between the minimum and maximum.
Yes, yes.
Which
Right,
would be
50% is
mid-range.
the very middle,
Mid-range,
just means very,
okay,
by definition,
okay.
very middle of the range. So 25% would be a quarter, up to a quarter of the range,
Right.
Okay.
which would give them the flexibility, or probably would handle, my guess, Ken, that would probably handle the majority of your hires for your positions. But usually you run in, with higher level positions, more experienced people, that's when it starts going above.
Sure.
Okay.
there really haven't been, in the last year, had that many people that we've requested above the minimum. 5.
And that's what you would expect. You try to, from a comp policy, try to hire no higher than the midpoint,
If you,
ideally,
everybody
because
you
that gives
hire goes
people room
above
to
your
grow.
mid-range, your minimum, and guess what? Your minimum's too low.
Yeah.
you know.
Okay, I'm looking through, and other changes, the performance-based pay increases, that has not changed from the current policy, that language. Determining pay rates due to promotions, lateral transfers and demotions, that has not changed. Pay rates for new positions has not changed. Addressing red circles have not changed. The two additions now on the bottom of page 6, addressing green circle pay rates. Now this I would see should be a short-term situation, but you should have something in your policy that says what we're going to do should it happen. And so that's what this does. And basically it's saying if you have an individual who falls below the entry level for their assigned pay grade, the first thing you need to do is determine that they're appropriately placed, that they're in the right pay grade. And if they are in the right pay grade, are they performing at a competent level of performance? Are there any performance issues before you would address and bring them at least up to the minimum? Well, that's what that piece says in short. And the addressing internal equity adjustments is giving the city the ability, as they identify, as they feel the need, if there are internal equity adjustments need to be made because individuals have been, for various reasons has happened, pay compression, updated market data, realigned adjusted pay grades. There's all sorts of reasons that can throw somebody out of whack from where they should be in a pay range. This just gives you the ability, should you choose, should it be identified, how you would go about that. And again, it's the same process. Is the person in the correct pay grade? Are they performing where they need to be? Where should they be based on their job performance, based on their years of the job? Where should they be placed in that pay range? And how to go about making those adjustments. And the bottom line in all of these is in the city's ability to pay, to make the adjustments. And the final paragraph is the same as before. No policy can cover everything. It's intent to cover most of the issues, and that at any time it can be reviewed and updated as needed to meet the needs of the city. Any questions on that before we roll to the new pay grades? I don't know if there's any specific questions. I think, I believe I'll identify a few new positions I'm aware of, and I think there's on pay range, let's see, well, there was one small change from an earlier discussion. The kennel attendant, my initial recommendation was to have them in pay grade 1 along with the general laborers and such. Based on previous discussions, a small edit was made, and the kennel attendant was given a slight change in pay grade, but I really split pay grade 1 into 1A and 1B with the kennel attendant. They're starting, from a market standpoint, their starting wage is lower than a general laborer. The thought was we were going to bring them into that pay range to help with turnover, because there's been quite a bit of turnover in those particular positions. But at this time, we moved back to a more conservative approach and said, we'll make the adjustment based on market. So that's what that pay range 1A represents, market for the kennel attendant. The pay rate 1B is the same. I'm trying to think. We have a cash coordinator in pay range 3. That's a new position, and I don't know if that's been, what the status of that is.
Positions that we have current when we have a new controller, a financial officer, and you're merging of people's jobs and responsibilities, given the experience and knowledge of one particular individual, they were going to kind of shift some duties and responsibilities and add some duties. So
What title is that?
A cash coordinator, and we have a job description for that.
Cash coordinator inactive?
it's not a new.
Oh, no, it should be. I apologize. This was last minute cleanup, literally this morning, and I thought I gotten that deleted. No, that I wasn't sure what the status was, and my understanding is they want to present it. So I was asked to do the job description and make a recommendation for the pay level for that position, and it's pay range 3 for cash coordinator.
It's not a new position, it's a new title.
New title. Well, new title, new responsibility. So it's a new position.
Doing accounting.
But it's not a new FTE. It's an individual, a job that's been upgraded to better match what the person actually does in finance, my understanding.
And prior they're in lower pay range?
I'm sorry?
prior, they were in a lower pay range?
This cash coordinator would have been, I believe, was administrative assistant 1,
So, yeah.
or accounts receivable, I'm sorry, accounts receivable, didn't know. I've done a number of accounts
So is
receivable.
their pay going to
clerk.
change?
Yes.
Maybe a little bit.
What's that?
How much is a little bit?
I'm sorry? What was
How
the
much is a
question?
little bit?
How much is a little bit?
How much is, what's
They went-
what's the question though,
How much
specifically?
would the pay change?
Oh, her pay won't change. There was no
Should
pay.
be just be in a different grade.
It's just a
They
different
overlap.
grade. No, that is not, it's not. This
not gonna
individual's
change.
already at a high level pay.
Okay.
All it is
Okay.
is saying her job duties are more accurately reflected. It's in a higher pay grade, but there's
So
no
her
change
pay
in
will
pay.
not change?
No pay.
Okay.
change.
Should be in a
Just a
different
job,
grade.
basically a job that more accurately reflects what this person's
Is she one of
doing.
the people who was over the, was she red, she was in the red line? Okay.
She may have been, I can't, or been close to it. I don't recall. I don't recall.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
We're trying to align the time.
Don't want him.
Titles and job duties, more, not,
Okay,
What's
gotcha.
that?
okay. Since the last one, let's see, we have in pay range 5,
Exactly. No.
there are a paralegal with the, now, Les, I don't know if you want to speak to this, but I want to make sure I'm correct. My understanding is from the legal department, the paralegal position is one that we've got a job draft on, and I've recommended that position be a pay range 5,
For
and
resource.
we will not be replacing, or city won't be replacing the city.
Pay grade 5.
That-
Will be pay grade back.
What's in there?
Pay range 5. That's based on your market analysis.
Right, right.
It would be an actual paralegal, but
Certified, individual certified.
it'd be someone, not just be a secretary. it'd be an actual
With a 2-year, right,
paralegal.
with 2-year
With a
certification.
paralegal degree or paralegal certification.
What is the redevelopment attorney part-time under pay range 5?
What we did was eliminated the city attorney,
Uh-huh.
and since up for the past year, 25% of my salary and Tom's salary has come out of redevelopment.
Uh-huh.
So what we did was, since redevelopment really can hire anybody they want to hire and contract with anyone they want to contract, we eliminated city attorney and just put in a part-time redevelopment attorney. So that way, the money that, it's not all together. Redevelopment is separate, and then corporation council is separate. They're no longer going to be lumped together.
What's the purpose of that? What's the purpose of that?
Well, the purpose, in my opinion, is redevelopment can hire whoever they want. They do not have to go through us. Because according to what they said, if
Oh.
they use their general budget,
So then our corporation council will not be the redevelopment attorney?
It's a separate job.
it can
Separate
be,
responsibilities.
Continue to still be redevelopment attorney, but it's a separate job and it's a separate pool of money, and they can hire. Scott?
Yeah, by statute, redevelopment commission is the same thing as like the sewer board, the drainage board, statutorily, it has the right to contract. It's
I understand.
So it could technically go out and contract.
But the sewer board pays a portion of the finance controller's salary, and that's how we've set up the attorney in the past, so why the change?
because he was doing work with redevelopment, but that's separate. It probably never should have been combined in the first place, in my opinion.
So should the sewer department hire their own controller?
Probably not.
No, I think it's the same thing.
It really doesn't matter to me how it's presented on.
Oh, I understand. I'm just
did it,
wondering.
and Connie and I discussed this, and there, was a way to, separate out the two.
The thought process is, if I understand, is that there's really two
It's the
distinct
same thing as the
jobs.
sewer board.
You have the work that's done by redevelopment. Now, would you really have an individual who is performing that job, but if you merge those monies, it becomes kind
I
of
just thought to myself, I
mucky,
think it should be
because what
separate.
happens should the next person come in as corporation counsel and they don't do that? So by keeping them separate, you say, you can, that gives the redevelopment group, they can either just hire their own outside person or pay that as a contractor or what have you, or they can,
Most redevelopment commissions have, it's unusual we're unusual that the corporation council also serves as a redevelopment
If they got enough votes, they could terminate him. Correct?
Yeah.
They could, because,
When I was on city council, and on the redevelopment commission,
But he's still gonna be
city
council
attorney
for
was,
redevelopment?
those who were saying full-time.
How do you have, does FLSA allow one employee to hold two jobs?
He's a-
And have two different
This position
salaries?
is not covered under the Fair Labor Standards Act.
Okay.
It is what we call an exempt
said
level
25,
position,
right,
would
it's
come under the
exempt.
professional classification as an attorney. So they aren't even covered by the law.
I do have a question regarding that.
Sorry, he can work 100 hours a week and you don't have to pay him any more
Well,
money.
it depends.
On a part-time basis, how can you have a minimum pay range when you don't know how many hours they're gonna work?
That would, my understanding it is roughly 50% time, and that can be defined for this document and say that's a half-time position, but it wasn't clearly defined. I mean, in the course of a year, it's a 50% time job. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
sometimes.
Didn't we used, I was trying to think, previously we paid by the hour, wasn't that correct? Billed by the hour? It wasn't on a retainer?
Fast,
Before you were the attorney?
yeah. They were spending between $40,000 to $50,000 per year.
There's a manual.
I can't remember. I was thinking it was less than that, but you might be right. I don't know. But what I'm saying is, it was by the hour, I know.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you.
I think we need some clarification on
I mean, I
that.
can tell you, Elkhart has a redevelopment attorney, which is part-time, outside their legal department. It's $55,000 per year, average, that's the average, because it's hourly. Anderson has a redevelopment attorney that's separate from their legal department, makes about $50,000 per year. She charges $200 an hour. I spoke to her. And then Marion, Indiana has a redevelopment attorney that's outside their legal department, and again, makes approximately $50,000.
What about, do you happen to know New Albany, what they do?
for their
Do
redevelopment.
not know New Albany is, I mean.
And generally speaking, when-
Last time I looked, they paid their city attorney.
Scott,
La-
we
last
cannot,
time I- Last time I looked, which was 2 days ago, they paid their city attorney $100,000.
I
right.
mean, I know.
We cannot determine what redevelopment pays their attorney, can we? I mean, as a city council, we cannot tell them.
Well,
I mean, if they
Yeah.
go out contract, I mean, as long as they
It's a-
have the funds there, I mean,
Mhm.
because that would be a contractual employee.
Right. Our only focus would be corporation attorney.
right. And from a compensation standpoint, if you can get an attorney in a salary position versus hourly, you're going to be ahead. Because
I
you
don't
said
dis-
hourly, they could be
The reason
150
we-
and $200 an hour for
The
an
reason we
attorney.
had this all one position was to save money, not to have two separate positions that we pay on separate accounts. And the idea was to have a city attorney who worked for all of the boards that we had, and then we charged the redevelopment board 25% of that salary. You know, that was their way of contributing to that compensation. Now, if they want to contribute 25% of the city attorney's salary and then go contract outside on top of that, then that's their prerogative. But for us, I don't see why we're putting a position in our salary ordinance that we have no control over.
They're not liable, they don't have to pay for the corporation counsel unless the corporation counsel works for them. Is that correct, Scott?
Yeah, that is correct.
Yeah, so they don't have to pay anything unless that is agreed upon thing with the redevelopment. All I'm saying is we cannot control redevelopment and what they do. All we can control is the corporation counsel. I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think it was done incorrectly to begin with. It probably never should have been combined at that time.
It's done across other employees through different departments, though, is what I'm...
I think attorneys, it's a different, because it's a contractual thing. Scott, is anything else, like he wanted to go with controller, I guess the sewer board, if they wanted, they could hire their own controller.
Well,
They could
I mean,
contract
the-
with
the
them.
term-
Wait.
The term would not be controller. They could hire any financial consultant they please, which, when they do bond issues, they'd help pay for the cost of unbond and so forth. But controller, I mean, if you're
Yeah,
not a city
controller's the
controller, that's a
city.
statutory position. So they
Right.
couldn't hire someone that would have the same statutory powers as the city controller by law. I mean, the city controller still has to do certain things involving the sewer board that the sewer board cannot get around. I mean, other than hiring their own financial controller to look over the finances, but there still has to be certain work that the controller has to do regarding the funds that are city funds involving the sewer board.
And Umball does work with the sewer board and
Yeah.
works with the controller at the same time, which the sewer board
But
does
they
pay
can't
for.
hire a quota controller. That's a statutorily position. So
This position here in pay range 5, redevelopment attorney part-time would be coming out of the general fund though, is that not correct?
No.
If it's in our salary ordinance, it will not come out of the
No,
general fund?
redevelopment pays the city.
They fully
Same
fund
with
that
the
position.
Redevelopment director, the grant writer, and the administrative assistant. None of those monies come out of the general fund, it's just a pass-through.
If the redevelopment commission has the ability to hire anybody they want, then why are we offering that pass-through? What's the point of having this in our,
You're saying opposed to a salary, opposed to a contract.
yeah, what's the point?
My other concern with this, and I think we need to discuss this a little more.
Sure.
My big concern is when you say part-time, we need to define part-time. Because part-time can mean anything.
Right, and I had some
I-
brief
I'm-
discussions with Les on that. My understanding was 50%, and I said my preference was that that be specified, what that range was.
I did this at the request. I mean, we can simply just go back to the old system where redevelopment just supplements the corporation council.
I'm just asking, I didn't know what the purpose was. The other system seemed to
Well,
make
part of it we
sense.
don't want to lose track of is the city will no longer have get this right, we'll have corporation council, but the city attorney's going away, but that work hasn't gone away. You're replacing it with part of that work with a paralegal, so there's still another group of legal activity that needs to be addressed, so,
And another thing to point out is under this proposal, right now, redevelopment only pays $23,000, $23,700 of the corporation council's salary. Under this proposal, $47,500 would go toward corporation council's salary.
and based on that number, I said I would assume that's about a 50% position, and that's why it was placed in pay grade 5.
We probably need a little more discussion on that.
Yeah, let's,
Any
What's
question?
confusing me is if we had our city engineer that said, I'll also be the wastewater treatment guy.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
If, wasn't a question. If we had our city engineer that said, I'll also be the wastewater treatment guy, part-time or full-time, would we pay them both, pay the engineer,
His salary.
the engineer, wherever he is in here, pay grade 9 or 10 or whatever that is, and then also pay him
I think that's a different.
for the other? I don't think we would, and I think that's what's confusing. Well, that's what's
I don't think we can
asked him
compare
about,
the
they said,
two.
have you practiced, do you have employees with the city currently that are working 2 positions? And my understanding, you do have that
Yeah.
currently going on. It's
Right.
not typical, it's not something
And we're paying them out of both? We're paying them for 2 jobs, Kim.
holding 2 positions as long as people are paid appropriately. Where it becomes a question, if you had somebody who's in a non-exempt classification, you have to make sure if they're 2 different jobs, you're paying them overtime based on the combined hours. But from an exempt level position,
What positions now are held by, what 2 positions now are held by
here.
1 employee?
The UEC director,
Uh-huh,
traditionally was like the UEC director and somebody else.
Okay.
UEC and or economic development, UEC and admin system.
That's probably not true. Because UEZ never really had a director. They got stipend for that.
Do what?
Clarence was UEC and economic development.
okay.
Jay was redevelopment.
Redevelopment UEZ.
And we got another $5,000
I'm
Okay.
trying to think, I don't know what that would be.
Well, Andy is an engineer, he gets paid, he does some drainage stuff, and he gets a little money out of drainage and engineering.
The mess coordinator who serves on the sewer board. I mean, it's, you know, I mean, one of the things that I do.
It's all over the place.
That Monica and Amy and I talked about since then is that typically making sure that those individuals know that there's issues around documenting that time and capturing that time.
Accurately.
Connie, that works for me, I mean, she does fire merit commission meetings, and I've said to her, that's fine, you do that, so that's separate. When you do your meeting minutes, you don't do those between 8 and 4 Monday through Thursday when you're working in HR. You type those at home on your computer, or if you want to stay on the, you know, off the clock and use the computer and do the minutes on your own time, you're more than welcome to do that.
If you would prefer to go back to where redevelopment just supplements the salary, that's fine.
I mean, that less to me, I don't understand. I mean, it works so well with all the others, whether it's Andy or whatever, because you as an attorney, out of the budget, you get your insurance, family insurance, and all that stuff comes under it, and the redevelopment compensates you $1, a certain amount, whether it was 25%. I guess the confusion is, we got all these other department heads that share this responsibility, and I don't really know. We have to absorb it for a minute to see if it's worthwhile, because at the end of the day, I don't know if it really matters.
Well, one thing we need to look at, and can't lose sight of, you're losing one full-time attorney, and that work is needing to be picked up. So in theory, the corporation counsel's position has gotten larger. So I wouldn't be surprised if I were asked to review that job now, given with a larger scope of responsibilities, which then might put it in a higher pay grade. So it's going to be, I shouldn't say it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, but somewhere along the line, you have to recognize additional responsibilities are coming with the loss of one attorney and the replacement will be with a paralegal position.
But okay, let's take the paralegal position. The paralegal, using the same argument, the paralegal, wouldn't he or she be partially 25% compensated by redevelopment too? Because a paralegal would be working for you. I'm not familiar with what a paralegal does, but they would be working for you, I guess, doing some of your workload. And if you do some redevelopment stuff, she would.
Yeah, that would be I'll say redevelopment, yes, good.
That's what I'm saying. It would be the same. If you did 25%, she would, or he would be 25%, or whatever.
All I was trying to do was
That makes sense.
trying to simplify it and also without moving corporation counsel to another page.
Yeah.
But that would be the other option.
Something else to consider with this position, this part-time position, is the city's saving about $25,000 also by not hiring a second attorney. I don't know if you're taking that into consideration.
I don't know. I'd have to see the numbers.
Gerald's call.
I'm a little confused.
See, I'm just thinking, how
Well,
long it's going to happen.
moving on, I have another
Okay.
question.
But
What-
if I could,
Yeah, but we've
Oh, sure.
been all over the place.
Whatever we're gonna
We've
do.
been from
I'm just telling
Gotta
you,
figure it
because
out.
next,
Figure it out.
the next meeting,
I agree.
I bet you redevelopment will have their own.
I kind of like keeping
Things that
the,
are pending,
I, because that's the way it's always been. You get somebody who knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
Not somebody
you
who,
know whether or not,
you know.
or
what I'm talking about.
25% comes from redevelopment, can supplement your,
things
On
that
both?
you gotta
We
take
just
care
need to
of.
talk about, to me, the
And
bottom
usually it was
line
done
is,
under contract, which was David Lewis who was doing
Things
it.
you realize
bottom line to me is the dollar amount.
need addressed.
Well,
Give me the max
If
dollar
it's
amount.
contract, I don't even see why it would come under here, but,
I
Matt,
still
you had
wanna
another
see
question?
the
I
amount.
do.
oh, yeah. no,
Why
I
do
know.
we have some employees, this is going to be answered easily, I'm sure. Why are some employees marked exempt and others are not? What is
I
the,
did that just for clarification, that's that FL, that Fair Labor
Right.
Standards Act.
I understand.
And I just put that in and put it at the bottom just as a clarification. They're paid salary. To be exempt, they have to be salaried. So I just put it down there more for clarification.
is there a
So I just
reason?
separate them, so the other positions are hourly by default. The
What-
ones that marked exempt are paid salary.
I understand that, but what is the method of determining who is exempt and who is not?
Oh, boy, how much time do you
That's a
have?
whole another meeting.
Okay,
That would be another meeting, but in general, it's all covered under the Department of Labor, Fair
Okay.
Labor Standards Act, and they have 6 specific exemptions, and you have to fall underneath one of those.
That's all I
That's
need.
the easy
Okay.
answer.
We won't take any more time than that.
Do you allow like an exemption?
Okay.
And there's fact sheets on, well, there's fact sheets on all of them that define it. Even then, it can be a little hairy in some positions, whether they qualify or not.
Okay. I just wondered.
Good question. No, it's important you get that right. You do not want to be classifying somebody as
Exempt who couldn't be?
exempt who should not be.
Right.
You don't get in trouble the other way.
I understand.
Any other questions, comments?
It will be moved up here.
9.
No, it will be up to 10.
Connie, anything further, or are we?
No, just as long as, make sure that you get all the new people that are being switched around, like Andy's, the drainage person. Is it in here already?
Andy's, yes, I'm sorry, as we got on a question on the attorney, there is the waste, that would be in pay grade 5 also,
Okay.
the water resource position.
Mm-hmm.
It is the one above
Is it in
the
here?
first
Okay.
exempt positions, is water resources, construction, and maintenance coordinator. That's
Yep.
the new one for the city
Oh, I see
engineer's
it.
office.
Right.
I apologize, that was another new one since the last.
So then the only ones that we don't have in are the clerks.
The clerks, and I will get those in.
Okay.
They've all been approved.
Do what?
That's what I wanted to verify, that we were all, I thought it was all moving forward, I hadn't heard officially. so-
Okay, all right. Okay, then I think that's it. What time is it?
Okay,
That's
thank
an
you.
after.
6:15.
Oh,
Almost.
Okay, I think that's it. Do you guys want to take like a 5-minute recess so we can go over?
Move to
Okay.
take a 5-minute recess.
Yeah, we're going to take a 5-minute recess, and then we'll be back for the next part.
Thanks, Liz.
Are we including, like we hire this new person for drainage?
Okay, thank you very much. I'm Jorge Lanz with Jacoby Tombstone Lands Engineers. I'm here to try to clarify and answer some questions about all the plumbing that goes into downtown, and we've worked so hard on these drawings to make them clearer, but they just, I don't know, maybe I don't know if you want dim lights.
Oh,
but
it's
as
right
long as-
here.
Here, Connie.
That's okay, I can share with Dennis. That's okay. Don't put it in there, it takes up too much room.
So, the purpose of this drawing is to show the overall picture of what's going on. Over here to the left, I got a pointer, but I can't point it to this.
Yeah, that
You think
doesn't
that'll
look
work?
like that. No.
All right, so over here in this rectangle, that's the 10th Street pump station. That's where everything ends up before that pumping station then pumps it to that downtown treatment plant. And this pipe here, see if I can do this, Josh. Yeah. This 96-inch outfall that comes towards the interstate, it goes underneath the interstate, and then it goes underneath Clarksville, and it ends up at the Cane Run detention area and the flood control pump station number 5. You've heard us a lot of debate about that because we, the guys that are working on the sewers and spending all this ratepayers' money in downtown Jeff, want that pump station lowered to allow additional hydraulic capacity to our 96-inch pipe. When that ponding area gets deep down there in Clarksville, that water can actually come uphill and flood our pump station. So we're fighting hard to make sure that doesn't happen. So,
Could we,
Yes, sir.
could we put I'll call it a flapper valve, where it cannot go backwards?
yeah, we've got flapper valves, but when the flapper is closed, our bathtub doesn't drain.
Oh, I got you, we can't get it out.
Then you pump
We can't get it out. We're dead in the water,
And we're flooding
literally.
from inside.
Right.
I got you.
So what we're showing in here, and I went ahead and put the retention pond on there to show, but for the last 5 or 6 years, we've been making, I heard that, Dennis. We've been making storm sewer extensions by separating, this whole area was combined sewers. So the combined sewers, we've left them in yellow, and the main interceptor that comes from the riverfront up this way, up to the 10th Street pump stations, this yellow one that we call the Mulberry Interceptor. It turns left on 8th Street, goes up Indiana Avenue to 10th Street, and then it comes in and it goes into the wet well of the 10th Street pump station. That's the real old, real deep sewer that's the cause of our problems right there at the intersection of 8th and Ohio. And the reason why we put these two circles around the intersection of 8th and Ohio and the intersection of 8th and Spring, I'll get to that in a minute. And I'm not going to be very long, so don't worry. So we've got the combined sewers, we've got the storm sewers. The project that we're working on now, and I think that there was some confusion whether we were doing some downscaled version of the canal. There was two projects in the long-term control plan. One was a stormwater project, which would have been the canal. The other one is a combined sewer storage interceptor, which is this orange line here. And what that interceptor, it comes all the way from the riverfront, and I mean, it's a 12 by 8 down here. It's a humongous pipe. And instead of, what's going to keep us out of trouble with the EPA is instead of discharging combined sewer into the Ohio River, we're going to store it in this 2.5 or 2 mile long tunnel. We're going to store it in there. You can imagine what the volume is that, and don't ask me, I don't know it off the top of my head. And then we're going to run it through the pump station to the plant, to the downtown plant, treat it, and then discharge it to Mill Creek. Yes, sir.
Question right off the bat.
Yes, sir.
On the maps, I'm seeing your blue lines here are those separate storm sewers, correct?
That's correct.
That come from everything, runs into the drain, that's what this is.
Right.
That's the only pipe that I see that exits into the retention pond.
That is correct.
So are you saying that now that there would not be a CSO event in the pond?
No, I'm not saying that at all, and that's why these two little circles, I'm going to blow them up in a minute so that you can see what the technical team's concern is of the cross-contamination of how can that occur.
Okay.
I just want to, to lay out the total picture here. So with all the blue separated storm sewers,
Right.
in a perfect world, and we've separated sewers all the way up 8th Street.
Right.
We've separated sewers 7th and Ohio. We've separated sewers up 10th Street. And remember that when we do that, we've taken out the rainwater from the combined sewer interceptor, so it betters our chances of not having a surcharge or a combined sewer overflow. Because stormwater up to now, there's no regulation that says that we can't just dump it in the river or in the stream in Cane Run. So when that happens, it all comes down to Indiana Avenue. Here's the inlet of the pond. Right now, there is an open ditch between this point and that point. The storm sewers are built. There's just a cavernous ditch going through there with no detention pond. If we were to have a combined sewer overflow, it would occur in that ditch without the pond anyway. So, I mean, that is already built into it. Let me see if I can...
Hey, Jorge, you said, as of right now, they allow us to dump into the rainwater, into the creeks or into the Ohio. Are you saying that at some point you can foresee them not allowing that?
I remember when combined sewer emissions, I mean, dilution was the solution to pollution, and we could, as long as it wasn't just...
If it was separated, there's no problem.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right. So, Matt, now we get to the two, at least our two areas of concerns are, where we have gone through and put in these storm sewers for a long time, and I had a heck of a time explaining this to people. Our worst problem was at the intersection of 8th and Ohio, because that sewer, this yellow combined sewer, and don't worry, Connie, I won't get you with that.
Okay.
It comes in so deep in the wet well at the 10th Street pump station that any backup in that wet well, what happens? It stops the flow in that pipe. And the deeper that it gets, I mean, water seeks its own level, then you got water pushing it from the south, it's got to come out somewhere. So it would actually, there was 4 curb inlets right there at 8th and Ohio, and the center manhole right in the middle. Right. And there would be some phenomenon where the water, instead of going in, it was coming out.
Right.
Okay, so now what we've done is by putting in these storm sewers, we've taken the 4 curb inlets and connected them to the storm sewer, but that manhole is still there.
Right.
Now, even though we've taken a bunch of rainwater out of the combined sewer, I know that I've seen one instant, and it was before the 10th Street pump station was completed, I've seen one instant where we still had that overflow.
Sure.
So what happens if the combined sewer comes off the top, off that manhole, and now it's going to get in the 4 curb inlets, it's going to get in the storm sewer, and it goes in the ditch or the pond or whatever.
How big is that pipe? Right there.
Josh?
The sewer pipe.
The storm pipe is 36 inches,
The sewer.
Oh, the sewer's 21, I'm sorry.
Combined sewer is 21.
And it's 19 feet in the ground. The storm sewer is 4 foot high. 4 foot deep. Okay? So that is one of our concern points. The other one is over here at the intersection of 8th and Spring. We have a big, I mean, when this pipe, when the 8th Street combined sewer interceptor hits Spring Street, it's 60 inches. It's 5 foot diameter. I mean, it's a huge pipe. And then when it turns north along Spring Street, it's a 72-inch diameter, so it's a 6 foot pipe. I mean, these pipes are big. So we went through there also with the storm sewer and did what needed to be done, which was to connect the curb inlets to the storm sewer, take them away from the combined sewer, but that phenomenon still can, I think that potentially it can happen that the combined sewer comes out of the manhole, gets on top of the pavement in the street, and when it goes to the curb inlets, now it goes in the storm sewer and it can go in the ditch or the pond or whatever you call it. So,
Well, when we have the orange interceptor complete, will that take pressure off of the yellow combined sewer?
absolutely. Because one of the things that we're looking at doing, considering right now, is at these points of concern, instead of having the curb inlets connected to the storm, we'll just connect the curb inlets to the storage interceptor.
So there is no planned pipe that would normally on a day-to-day basis have raw sewage in it planned to go into the pond?
No.
I don't think anybody ever thought that.
I thought that was what the conception was.
No.
So then the only time we'd have the sewage water in the pond is if there's an event that overflows this combined sewer, and then it's going to drain into the storm sewer.
That's exactly right.
And then what happens after that?
All right, that's another very good question. Let me see if I can,
Give me one second.
Josh was supposed to be up here, but I think he's taking a nap.
He's relaxing.
He's napping.
You wanted to see how your
Here we
computer
go.
skills were, Jorge.
I
like that picture.
I can't even find the pointer. I want to go to the one of the 10th Street pump station, so go to the...
Before you move on too quick, because we don't have the pond now, we just have the ditch. So that when that overflow occurs at those two intersections, it hits those storm sewers and goes into the ditch, right?
Absolutely. And
There is another, it will back up at 8th and Walnut Street, which it doesn't show here. 8th and Walnut's here. We've lost manhole cover there, which does go into the catch basins.
Right.
And comes into the poo pond too. So it goes back to 8th and Walnut.
that intersection is higher in elevation than the elevation at 8th and Ohio, so the storm's got to be of much more intensity for it to happen in both places. That's why I didn't red circle that.
But I mean, I've documented when it has blew a cover off.
Okay. Very good. So this very complicated diagram again, now this is the plumbing at the 10th Street pump station. And, well, I can barely see that. This 48-inch pipe right here, that's what's coming from the pond or the ditch where it says 48-inch storm sewer. And then it turns this way and it goes out, this is all storm sewer, and it hits this box. And then it goes out to 96, okay? I don't know if y'all can follow me on that. This box right here is also where the combined sewer overflows, because after the repiping that was done for the station, this is the diversion box for either sewage or combined sewage. So the sewage has got to get deep enough in this chamber to jump through the screen and then go out as this is a combined sewer overflow that goes out this 84, and it ends up in the same box as the storm sewer does. So we're not making a new CSO point that we got to worry about with IDEM. Two things that we're looking at to try to keep the river away from us when the waters are coming up the 96 in the direction of the station. To be able to flood us, they got to go through this pipe. So right here, we're going to put in a check valve that'll protect the 10th Street pump station. And then we're also, it can, if it gets deep enough, it can go up our storm sewer, and we're going to have a check valve right there so that the river can come back and not only flood the the intersection of 10th and Spring, but the pond. So those two are in the works as part of the overall program.
Jorge, when the pressure, I don't know if I got my questions right, but I mentioned about a check valve or whatever.
That's what these are.
If the pressure below the river side of the valve, do we have pumps that have stronger pressure than the river side to force it toward the river?
No,
You know what I'm saying?
no. When that happens, our 50 MGD pumps at the pump station are still sucking that wet well, or trying to maintain the level low enough, and pumping that to the treatment plant. And then the overflow is going out our new 72-inch Mill Creek outfall that goes out Pennsylvania and past, and it goes straight across Hamburg Pike. That pipe we just finished and put into service.
So we don't, I guess that makes sense, we don't pump it that way, we pump it that way.
But
And
our
that's just
pump,
overflow that way.
that's just overflow, gravity overflow that way.
I got it.
And at the condition where the river is at flood stage, when the river gets high enough, we're depending on the flood control pumping stations.
Yeah.
And that's why our big deal is, we want to make sure if we're going to spend $6-10 million in this flood control pumping station, that it's not only sized correctly, but that the pumping range is low enough so that it can drain us. Because right now, the pumping range occurs all these elevations. I'm like, we might as well stop spending any money in downtown Jeff. This is crazy. And I mean, if it happens one time a year, it's one time too many. So, that's the big picture of it. We added a couple of more just to kind of put the whole thing in perspective where, thank you, Josh. All right, here's the old layout of the canal. I mean, I just wanted to make a comparison of that. That pond is exactly the same pond at the same elevation, and the water elevation of that pond, elevation 430, is what set the canal grade all the way through. So that pond is in the same location. Here's the drawing, that same drawing of the poo pond. There it is. And there's the same drawing. There's the same drawing without the canal. The pond is exactly the same volume, same elevation. So,
Put the other picture back.
yes. Always make me work so hard.
Sorry, I want you to get used to that.
Got it.
Now, even with this plan in place, when we have the yellow combined sewers overflowing, they're still overflowing and draining into the storm sewers and still draining into the same water, the same pond.
Draining into the canal. If we would have had a contamination issue, and this was stated at the canal meetings, if this pond gets contaminated, we'd have a contamination issue. That would have to be, I mean, it's not the end of the world. You just got to go out there and handle it.
So the poo pond, being a poo pond, then isn't the end of the world either.
I don't believe so. And neither does Land Nation.
Is, Jorge, if you get the interceptor and if the canal would have been built, you have that much more capacity.
That is true.
That less likely.
There's no denying that.
So everything that you're doing builds capacity.
That's exactly
to
right.
prevent that.
That's correct. We can email these drawings. We've got some hard copies of the big map. I mean, I think that the projection doesn't do it justice, but I think if you look at those drawings, and please call me, I mean, I'm around all the time. It is what it is. That's the same plumbing plan that we've been working on, trying to improve it. But I mean, every time we add a pipe, we put it on the plumbing plan just to give you all keep you up to speed on where we're going with this thing. But, gravity's gravity. I think anybody,
Volume's volume.
Volume's volume, gravity's gravity, and poop is poop. And, you can, if you find an engineer that will stand up here and tell you that will never happen, run. Because I'm telling you, when you're dealing around, combined sewers, it's just, stuff happens. Any more questions? I'll be here for a bit. Thank you.
Oh, I was just shaking my head. Did anybody else have any more questions? No?
Just have some handouts to give.
Okay. Yeah, you know what? Lisa's probably going to want one. Yeah, give it.
And you all have the resolution.
Okay. Thank you.
And I'll put them in your packet Monday night.
Can I have this plan, Ms. Connie?
Yes. She's got mine over there.
What had your autograph on it? That's why
Oh, that's where he went door to door down there.
Just one thing, I believe Jorge didn't mention, or maybe he did, but was about really nothing's been tested. We really haven't had a true test yet on how everything's going to work since we do have the 50 MGD pump station put in place. So
I've been down there so many times.
it's just one thing to keep in mind. So hopefully with that will make a big difference. The larger handout, the 11 by 17, that particular handout just shows basically what Jorge was showing earlier, where it's the larger, where it's not the larger, but it's showing the original park and the pond itself and detention basin. So I believe that was designed by Covert Hawkins. I'm not sure exactly the dollar figure, but the figures that whenever we were looking it up, I believe that park came to about $2.5 million. The other handout that I gave you is one from Jacoby Tombs and Lands. I just gave you that. That was actually addressed to Melissa Woods. I thought it just kind of summed everything up fairly well about the Falls Landing Park project, the drainage problems. And the other handout that I gave you was, I've been hearing a lot about, that particular neighborhood is not interested and not in favor of the park project or the drainage project or actually even the museum project. Lynn and myself went down there to the neighborhood. We walked on Indiana Avenue. We walked from 7th Street to 9th Street. We knocked on every door. And these are all the responses that we received. So just thought that at least it'll give you a clear picture of what the people in the neighborhood are thinking about the projects that we're working on.
Most of them weren't aware of the projects unless they read it in the paper. No one had been to visit them or give them any information about it. So we thought that it would be a good idea to just get firsthand information from them.
Do you have any other questions for us?
Okay, this picture, is this the one again where it's going over too far, or is this the whole park?
That's from the plan prior. This was before our administration. This was in the prior administration. This is what they had in place. That was the plan that Covert Hawkins
Where's
designed.
yours going? The park.
It's not as big as that, no.
Well, I was thinking that we weren't crossing something because of contamination or something.
Broadway.
Broadway?
I can get it for you, but
Where is Broadway?
I don't know.
well, it stops like right here.
That's what I was thinking. Is it on this part that's the contaminated part? Or?
It's
That's
like
probably-
right
That's
here,
probably Broadway right here.
because this is, I
Oh, gotcha.
Because Bales is here, and I think they're talking about this area here.
think this is Broadway running
Is that
actually
Broadway?
like right here.
Okay,
Okay.
So then it was kind of going this way.
like that.
Yeah, and then I think I think it's called like the CSX area was like right in here.
Okay.
I know that's the railroad tracks, I thought that was the street, that's the street.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not on there because the pond's covering it. The pond's covering it next. Well, I wanna
You think
see
that's
what-
Broadway, Mike? Right
He
here?
said he
Seven.
thought that was wrong.
That's what I got it.
Yeah, 7th Street by 7th Street.
Yeah, right here.
I was thinking it.
I thought that was, but that must be the railroad tracks.
Yeah, if that's the CSX,
No, it's pointing.
if he said that was the CSX,
Property,
property.
yeah.
So, let's see where we at on here. Here's these buildings.
I think she's
That's
turning
the
the
rental
document
buildings.
reader on for you.
Oh,
That's the
well,
used store buildings.
yeah, I was just looking on there so I could
No,
get myself
here are
on
these,
there.
yeah.
And then.
It's up there on the screen now if you want to see
The
where
Indiana?
Broadway is.
Oh, there's Broadway. So it's up here.
You almost have to turn it like that.
Yeah, it's right here.
Well, wherever this cut is.
Yeah.
Roughly,
Yeah.
about like that.
So, yeah, there's Broadway going there. So we're staying in this section over here. So I'm thinking that's the area.
Okay,
So it wouldn't have all this extra.
okay.
I could make a joke, but I better not.
Yeah, it goes the other way, actually. Broadway is like right here.
Oh, is it?
So this is not,
Yeah, this is.
Rob,
not
can I ask a
what it's
question?
supposed to look like.
It's my understanding that drainage is not for this project. Do you know why? I mean, they,
No, I would like to know why. I have no idea
Well,
because I
they-
actually went to go talk
I
to
had a
them
call that said you guys were at the meeting.
probably a few months ago. We were at the meeting, when was that, Jorge, you remember?
He took my pen.
Whenever I went to
I was
drainage.
just wondering,
That was
because
before
I've
the first
had
of the
people
year,
ask me
I
if
think.
That was actually before we came to talk to you,
I don't
whenever
know.
you signed the
Join
first
some-
resolution.
They end up
That was the only drainage board meeting I went
Because
to.
I've personally gotten a
getting
call
so
from
much crap on
a
Facebook.
couple of people that are not for this off drainage. So I'm trying to gather, and Lisa's not here, I wish she was, because she's our drainage rep, but
She's sick, sorry.
It doesn't make any sense because they were all for
I'm just
it
saying,
and they approved the plan. When did they approve that plan, Jorge? I mean, it's probably 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, but there's
No,
an
not
easy
4 or
answer
5.
for that, and that's when it was with the canal could contain some of that water, so
So
that the chance of it
drainage.
overflowing.
I'm sure there's a difference between then and now. I mean, we all know that.
But I think then, I don't
Part of a
even,
bigger picture,
then it
but-
wasn't even, the canal wasn't even put into those plans.
All I'm saying is,
Yes.
Those plans were before the canal and they
my
were,
only comment, Rob, is I know that drainage is against it, and, I mean, if we're expected to vote on something, I would ask that some of the drainage members come to our meeting and tell us, you know, what the problem is, because, you know, if there's a drainage issue that we need to be made aware of, we need to know.
okay.
I'm just thinking out
Yeah,
loud, I'm
no, that's
telling you.
fine. I know that you all have done a master plan. Was this part of the master plan?
We included this in the master, stormwater master.
Did they accepted
This
that
is one of the
project yet?
short-term projects that's in the master plan.
Did they
Do
accept
you know when
the
that was
master
passed?
plan?
That must be what you're talking about.
that?
Because I'm trying to figure out, you're talking about all these different meetings. When was that approved? Do you know what
Oh,
year?
about a month ago.
Oh, the stormwater must,
The
okay.
stormwater master plan, it contains this project, it contains, what's the other projects we're doing? The one at Magnolia? Roselawn Court and Magnolia, and, yeah, so those are the 3 short-term projects. And then it contains a lot of other projects that have not been organized yet that's where they're going to prioritize.
Okay.
That's my only input, is if drainage has a problem with it, we need to know what their problem is.
But drainage
Dennis,
approved
I'll
the
be honest
master
with you,
plan.
I haven't heard that they got a problem with it. I mean, if they're telling you that, that's,
Well, I'm just saying, you know, I would like for them to come to our meeting, our council meeting, and address
we get,
what the problem is.
Okay.
So are you on drainage?
we go to the drainage.
You go to the
we're
drainage.
engineers.
Okay.
But once again,
We'll have to ask.
just to clarify, they did approve the master plan
Yeah, the
that
master plan
included
approved,
this.
Right.
And they did that a month ago. So if they approved it, you would have thought if the majority of them didn't want this project, they would have taken it out.
I think, actually, the drainage board, and Scott, correct me if I'm wrong,
But real quick though, first of all, the master plan, that's not where there's commitments to everything. That's to act as a guide and recommendation, okay? Doesn't mean every project's gonna happen. And secondly, what they approved had nothing to do with that park. That was the big contention when
well, sure, we just had to do it.
when you came for the drainage board, I'm speaking because I was their attorney. You know, they didn't want to have any part, they didn't think their role is to fund anything that's totally outside, specifically, that had something to do with stormwater.
We're not asking for any funding, though.
No, so I mean,
Yeah.
so to say that this has been approved by drainage, what was presented in the master plan is not park.
Yeah, it's just the,
Retention only.
right.
And it was, but there was no commitment at this point in time to fund anything.
That makes more sense.
They're actually expecting, I mean, the drainage board is expecting somebody to say, here's how much we want you to put in.
That makes more sense.
But I know the big concern was when it was presented as far as it being like a park, that for the drainage board didn't think they did not want to, they thought exceed their authority to fund a park project when their only statutory mission is to address stormwater issues, not a park. So that was the big beef that the drainage board had about that.
Okay, all right.
And again, I think it'd be great if they came and clarified that for us.
Okay.
We do have a signed resolution from redevelopment to fund the match for the project.
Yeah, can we talk about the park though, because I think that's what, go ahead and,
Yeah, and the reason that the grant was offered to us, if it was a regular drainage project without the park element, we would not be offered this grant. It needs this park element to make it a special project. If it was just a drainage project, they would have asked us to apply just through the regular grant process.
right.
So that was the only reason that they offered us this
How
in
much
a
is-
non-competitive way.
How much is the park going to cost, the total amount?
The total, including the grant money or without the grant?
If we didn't have the grant, how much would it cost, and then we can subtract the grant money from it? How much is the total cost of the
total
park?
amount.
Is one,
1.2 million.
1.2? How much is the grant for?
500,000.
Why don't you put that up?
Okay, is this including the pond, too?
Yes. This is
There it is up there.
everything. This is everything.
And the pond, Jorge, you said you thought was 300?
380, we had given the drainage board an estimate for the pond only, the excavation, no walls, no sidewalks, no nothing. The excavation of the drainage component was 380.
Which would have to be taken on by the drainage board.
Sure, I mean, unless somebody else comes up with the money. That would
Do
be-
they have the money?
They have $1 million a year.
Oh, no,
Yeah, but they
they've got
already have
commitments.
projects and commitments, and they have bonds they have
That's
to
what I'm
pay.
saying. If we go this route, redevelopment's taking care of the whole bill.
No, he's saying that drainage still needs to come up with the
If
money.
you look at this estimate.
She's
that
saying they're
was done,
taking care of the whole bill.
Oh, okay, you guys are
Redevelopment
taking...
signed the entire match.
Okay,
There would be no money from drainage. There would be no match
Okay, gotcha.
required from drainage, right?
River Hills took this estimate that we had given. The first situation that we had is that IOCRA does not allow you to add a contingency component to an estimate, which is ridiculous, because how can you do an estimate without doing any design, without contingency? Gosh, I wish I was that good. I know I'm not. So we had to take the contingency and build it into the numbers that we were putting in there. So the third column from the right, the total cost of the project, you can see what that bottom line is. It's the 1,198,000, let's call it $1,200,002. That's, and then they broke out the part that's going to be paid for by IOCRA, which would be some of the excavation, the $500,000.
Lisa's pretty
And
much
then the balance
on
would be the
this.
$700,000, which would be split by redevelopment, drainage, whoever, it'd be local funds.
Was she saying redevelopment's taking it
Redevelopment has
all?
agreed to fund the entire.
right,
There's no other money.
There's no split.
They've signed for the 698.
and save money, and not
Yeah,
spend all the
over
money.
600,000.
Right.
What was that?
saying that we could save money just by building the pond for 380.
But redevelopment then won't pay
Well,
for it.
redevelopment won't pay if it's just a drainage project. And you,
Well,
So
yeah.
if we go the route of the grant, then redevelopment will take care of the entire bill. If we don't go the route of the grant, we've got a $300,000 project that has to be paid out of drainage. 380, 400,
I think we go back,
500 by the time you get done with it.
I think we
They
go
don't have
back to the same
$500,000.
thing. We really need to have somebody from drainage here to say, we bless this project, or what their problem is.
Because before, when we came in January, you told us one thing, and then the next meeting we had, you did, but you
Oh,
did.
okay.
You told us, I think, the correct figures.
Yeah.
And then the next person came back, the next meeting, and we were told the matching grant was 250. I told you that the other day. And,
I wasn't here for the second meeting, so I can't
right,
say.
and we were told no more than 250. Well, I think that's because they were hoping that drainage would pay some of that. Well, I'm just thinking, because now it's almost 700,000.
It might have been drainage match
So-
part was 250 or something like that. Might have been where that number came from. Maybe they were asking drainage to pay 250 and then redevelopment would have matched the rest or something. Yeah, could have been that.
The grant is paying, if I can't hardly read all the things, but it looks like the grant is paying for the
Oh, wow.
structure,
We've got this.
the pond. Is that correct? And the local match is paying for basically all the
This is
amenities.
different. This is different than that.
Is that
Well,
correct?
this is different.
Am I reading that correct?
Different.
And what's the possibility of getting
Nathan, I'm
them-
sorry, the grant, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, go
The
ahead.
grant is paying for $83,000 worth of sidewalk,
Okay.
curb ramps.
How much of the sidewalk? Oh, I see it. Well, no, I don't see it. Okay, I see curb ramps and, okay. Well, if we draw down the grant, how much more of a project does it have to be than $500,000?
We've already, whenever we sent in our first resolution to them, this was what we sent them. These are the numbers we sent, and they can't be changed at this point. They are very picky at this. I mean, if there was some stuff we could maybe take out, we can't at this point.
Is River Hills administering this? How come we didn't do this in-house? I'm just curious.
Because, well, actually, I just finished all my classes to administer. They require a special, and it takes an entire year, special license to administer these grants. It's not.
What kind of grant is this?
This is a CDBG grant.
Community Development Block
Community,
Through
yeah.
IO
Development
grant.
Block Grant.
It's through.
Are these offered annually, or how does
No,
this
this
work?
is a special, this is actually from,
2000.
actually, it's probably not, it's not a CDBG. It's a, from the Disaster Economic Development Recovery money from 08, from the flood in 08. That's what this actually came from. That's why there's such a rush on this. We have to get this passed on April 1st meeting. If we don't, then we don't have any other chances to get this money.
Well, we talked with Kathleen, and she gave us, I believe,
This is actually an extension, yeah.
mhm.
It's kind of hard to find the truth, isn't it?
And
I
actually,
don't have any
River
questions.
Hills had been working on this grant long before we came along as well on this exact project. So I don't know if we could even change at that point anyways. They had already started out on this project. So
The
they
previous
had,
administration?
Right.
But that's because it was going to be the head for the canal, I think.
yeah,
It was a $2 million grant. wasn't it?
2.5.
Yeah, I knew it was.
2.5 million.
Mhm.
Yeah.
How much will redevelopment pay, the $698?
Mm-hmm.
Just need to, do you have another one of those sheets?
Oh, here.
No.
I can give you
That's
that,
fine.
yeah.
Oh,
It's
that's
I
not it?
can send it to you tomorrow if
Okay.
you want me to.
I'm done.
You done? Okay.
Thanks.
All right,
Thank
thank
you
you,
all.
thank you,
Thank you
Jolene.
all.
I'll make a motion to adjourn, if you all have
Second.
no questions.
Thank you all. All those in favor?
Aye.